Hello everyone, my name is Darcy and I'm one of your friendly neighborhood 20-somethings programming librarians. Today we're going to be building a mini dry garden in the Zen style, also known as a mini Zen garden, with two small rakes. So let's talk about what you'll need. If you picked up a kit at the main library, you should have a set of instructions, a plate, a bag of sand, a few rocks in various colors and sizes, maybe some of these little shiny guys, a small bag of glue, 2 halves of a chopstick, 2 pieces of craft stick. One of them is longer and with no holes in it. One of them has 4 little holes drilled in it, 3 toothpicks, and a piece of sandpaper. You will also need some scissors for this, and they kind of need to be pretty hefty scissors. You're gonna have to cut those toothpicks in half. And I would highly recommend, if you want to dig around and find some other kind of rocks or little bits and bobs that you might want to put in your Zen garden. I found this giant rock that I thought was kind of interesting looking, so I might be putting that in mine. But anything you'd like to include that either has some meaning for you or you just think is nice or would make a nice inclusion to your dry garden, go ahead and grab that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is build our 2 rakes. So here are 2 completed examples. We're going to make one rake that has kind of the little tines on it, like a traditional rake. This will be for creating designs. And then this is a rake for kind of smoothing things out again. You can also use a nice paintbrush if you have one, maybe like one that hasn't gotten like actual paint in it already. To build your rakes, you'll need all the wooden pieces from the kit, the bag of glue, your sandpaper, and your scissors. We're going to start with the kind of straightening rake, the one without the little tines on it. So for that, we will need the larger piece of chopstick. It's got 2 lines cut into it, and one end is rounded, the other end is kind of raw. All of your wooden pieces are still fairly raw, so the first thing we're actually going to do is sand. I'm going to take out the plate pieces we don't need right now. So with your little piece of sandpaper, you just kind of want to smooth any edges and ends. Anything that's looking rough, you can go over the whole stick if you want. So that's what I'll do now. For this longer piece, this bottom piece, I'm going to round off all of my pointy edges, and I'm going to try and round off one side here so it comes to a little bit of a point, maybe not exactly a point, but a little bit. All right, now that I have both of my pieces fairly smooth, they're not great. I lost a little edge on this guy, but it's not the end of the world. I'm going to go ahead and look at how I want them to glue together. So right now I have my post kind of all the way flat. So if I glued it together, I'd have this would be kind of difficult to scrape with because the garden is going to be fairly small. So I really want it to be more at an angle. So you can take a lot of material off with sanding. You just kind of have to be dedicated. It is going to make a bit of a mess. You're going to get a little bit of like sawdusty bits around. That's not going to be a big deal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand down the end of this chopstick at maybe a 45-degree angle if I can get there. So that's what I'll do. All right, so that's a pretty good sand down. Let me see where we're at. That's a little high for me. Well, I think it'll turn out okay. I'm gonna sand it just a bit more. All right, I like that angle. So I'm gonna dust everybody off. And I'm going to take my little packet of glue, kind of push it down so I don't have glue right there at the top. pop that dude open. I'm gonna take one of my toothpicks. You've got a spare, so this is kind of your extra for moving glue. And get a little bit of glue out carefully. And just paint it onto the end of the chopstick I just sanded down. And now I'm going to attach that to the middle top of my rake. So I lost a little bit up here, so I want this to be the top because I want the edge that touches the sand to be as flat and straight as possible. So I'm just going to set this guy right there. So this is just regular PVA glue. It's Elmer's. So it'll take a little while to dry. So I would recommend kind of holding it in place for a minute or two and then setting it someplace where the stick can be held up, but you don't have to hold on to it. And then letting it dry for a couple of hours or even overnight is ideal. So we're going to tuck this guy away, and through the power of magical editing, here is our completed stick. It is lovely, a nice little rake ready for raking. All right, so that is one rake done. So now we're going to focus on our second rake. So we'll still need the glue, we'll still need the sandpaper, but now we'll get all of our other wooden bits. These two toothpicks that we haven't cut yet. I've still got my glue toothpick here, but we're not using it at the moment. And now's when we'll need the scissors. So I am going to take these two toothpicks and snip them right in the middle. I'm just going to eyeball it, but you are more than welcome to measure. I'm going to call that good. Uh-oh, I lost one. We'll go find it. So now, if you lost a piece of your toothpick, chop off the end of your glue toothpick. It's fine. Or you can go hunt down the other one. They tend to fly when you snip them, so be careful. So again, I've got all my wooden pieces together. So now I'm going to sand them down so they have kind of nice smooth edges and they'll be lovely to work with. So this, for the chopstick on this one, the end that is tapered is actually going to be the end that's connected to our rake. So you don't have to worry about, super rounding it. We're going to sand that into an angle before too long. So I'm going to sand down this kind of cut end. I'm going to sand a little bit on my toothpick ends, and I'm definitely going to sand this guy up really nicely. So that's what we'll do. Okay, so before we do any more sanding, we're going to go ahead and insert our tines into our rake head. So the way they go in, you're going to take the pointy end and kind of tuck it up through one of the little holes. They'll sit in pretty firmly. We can glue them in there if you'd like, but they will sit pretty tight without having to glue. So I'm going to go ahead and insert all of those, and then we're going to see how much we need to sand it down. You can kind of adjust them a little bit. They'll give you a little push-pull if you need to shift guys over. Not too bad. So that is what our base rake is going to look like. So this guy sticks out a little bit. I'm probably going to sand him down. I'm going to sand the whole thing at the bottom so they're about even as best I can. those guys are pretty well sanded at this point. So if you want to, you can take your glue chopstick end, toothpick end, and dab just a little bit of glue around each of those. That'll maybe help them stand a little bit better. You can pull them out again and then dip them in glue and reinsert, but I like where they're placed right now and I don't want to have to deal with it again. So we're just going to add a little bit of glue to those guys. All right, so that's going to dry and we are going to sand down our chopstick end. So we want this end of the chopstick to set right here at a bit of an angle. So we don't have to take off too much material right on this guy, but we're going to just sand off a little bit. So we'll let you dry. We'll get that sandpaper again. All right, I like that angle fairly well. For sanding this kind of thing, kind of the angle you hold it at on the sandpaper is going to be the angle that it sits on the rake. So I like this angle fairly well. It'll sit like that. So we're gonna go ahead and glue it on now. So there should be space in between your two middle tines to go ahead and glue that dude down. And you're just gonna get some more of your glue on your toothpick and paint it on there. And then same as your other rake, you're gonna set it in place, hold it there for a little bit, and then when you can, prop it somewhere where it's going to be able to dry for a few hours or overnight. Now that we have both of our rakes ready, we're gonna go ahead and assemble our dry garden. So grab your plate and your bag of sand. Be careful when you open it. You don't want it to go everywhere. It is not easy to clean up. And we're just going to dump this sand into our plate. And kind of shake it out. Now, if you want, you can use your flat rake to kind of shift where your sand goes, but we're still going to be doing some shifting around, maybe some shaking when we put in our rocks and things. Okay, so I'm going to place, I've got my two good rocks and then this big guy. I'm going to place this big guy first. I'll go ahead and settle him down in there. And then this guy. And I think I want this fellow here. Now, if you want, you can add in some of your little shiny dudes. You can kind of put your rocks close together if you prefer. Whatever kind of suits your tastes. I think we're just going to leave that one shiny guy. And now that you've got your rocks in place is kind of the best part. You can rake your sand. So fairly common raking is kind of these straight lines. So it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm very new to raking sand, so mine was a little wobbly, but it is very pleasing to work with. So here is my little dry garden. Now, traditionally what we think of as Zen gardens are Japanese rock gardens or dry gardens. But Zen Buddhist tradition of gardens is a lot more than just rocks. This temple garden shown is one of the most famous dry gardens in the world and probably one that you've seen before. Scholars think it was built in 1488 when the temple was rebuilt, but others argue that it's way older. This is probably the image of a Zen garden that sticks with you if you've seen a Zen garden somewhere, but the art has definitely continued to shift and grow. Zen Buddhist gardens emphasize extreme simplicity in a spiritual and symbolic way. with intention and purpose in every element. The examples I've shown you are masterpieces created with huge care and thought and time by master artisans. But even a little desktop dry garden made with play sand and craft sticks can let us emphasize mindfulness in the spirit of Zen by focusing on one action or activity like designing and raking your mini garden, for instance, and giving it your full concentration. Being in that moment, we can practice mindfulness. It doesn't have to be big and serious at all. Just like some of us really liked playing in sand when we were kids, it can be nice in a soothing way to kind of get back some creative exploration. But it's your mini Zen garden or your mini dry garden, and you should enjoy it the way you want to. If you're interested in mindfulness, meditation, or Zen Buddhist practices, we have tons and tons of resources for you at the library. Here are some of the books that I looked at. But there are also some really lovely and free online classes through Geaux courses. Linda and the great courses through Canopy are amazing. But thank you so much for listening, and we hope you guys have a great day. Bye.